Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're looking at two very similar models of flashlights from Olight. The i5T, which we have in the autism awareness version here on the left, and the i5R, which we have two versions of, the titanium version here in the middle and the carbon fiber here on the right. And so these have been covered pretty extensively on YouTube and on the internet in general all over. There's a ton of reviews out there on this, and that's because it's probably one of the most prolific flashlights in both of the various battery options. And so that's the main difference between them. The i5T operates off of a AA battery, where the i5R has a rechargeable, USB-C rechargeable 14500 lithium ion battery. And so that's a major difference. Obviously one's rechargeable, one's not, and the output that they're able to get out of them, the runtime they're able to get out of them differs a little bit. The body itself is almost identical, it's not exact, and I chose different materials here intentionally so that we can look at the weight difference between the different materials. The i5T, of course, is aluminum, and then we have titanium and carbon fiber, and it does make a decent amount of difference, where when we were looking at the i3T, it really didn't. The aluminum to the carbon fiber, it was a fraction of an ounce different, but I believe the aluminum was even a little bit lighter. Couldn't feel the difference in hand, whereas these you can. And just for that quick comparison's sake, here is the i3T versus the i5R. So you can see a little bit taller, a little bit thicker, obviously going to be a little bit heavier as well, but you get almost double the output on the i5R versus the i3T. And so I do have a video on that one already, so not going to talk about that one too much, but because these are so prolific, I thought it was important to get this video out, just like the i3T, because it makes a good comparison flashlight. So if we're looking at a flashlight that uses that 14500 battery that we see in the i5R, like this Ace Beam Pokelit, you can see obviously similar size, but we can also talk about the output and the beam distance and the battery life that they're able to extract out of that battery. And so it makes for a good comparison flashlight. So I'm gonna try and knock this out somewhat quickly, but also make sure to try and cover all of the important information here. So we're gonna start with the i5T. The base model of this runs about $30 when it's not on sale. Sometimes you can get a little bit cheaper. And one thing about Olight, they compare pretty favorably against a lot of different flashlights in their size and battery class, and not always the most output, but still up there and pretty comparable. But they do a lot of really cool variations. So if you don't want just a plain black flashlight, they have a lot of variations, and there's plenty of EDC companies out there that do different materials and even in some cases different colors, but I don't think really anyone does as many variations as Olight. And that's, obviously buy for function, but if you're buying for function and you can also get something cool, that's one thing that I really like about Olight. I have enough flashlights and I don't want necessarily just a plain flashlight. I want something that looks cool and add something functionality wise. And so really big fan of Olight for that reason in particular, because you can just get so much variation. But again, back to the i5T. So in that low mode, we're gonna see a similar lumen output. Both of them have a 15 lumen output. The major difference with the AA battery is that you're only able to get 20 hours in that 15 lumens. And so when we get to the i5R, you'll see that that's significantly lower, almost half what you're able to get out of that 14500. Operation on these is also really simple. So I'm in the full on mode. There's also kind of a partial on where you don't fully actuate that button, and you can cycle through those modes, but either way you just kind of click again to get to that next mode. And so in the high mode we're looking at 300 lumens. Pretty impressive still. It's a decent amount of light. Now that does step down after only 3 minutes. And so we're stepping down to 150 lumens, which is still a decent bit higher than that low mode of 15 lumens. And that stays there for another 25 minutes before stepping down again to 30 lumens. And 30 lumens isn't significantly brighter. Obviously it's double the amount of lumens from 15, but it's not a huge step up. That one runs for 122 minutes. So in that high mode, through all of the step downs, you're looking at about 2.5 hours of runtime, but only 28 minutes at 150 lumens or higher. And so that's going to be pretty different when we're starting to talk about this i5R. And I'll compare dimensions, but let's look at the different outputs on the i5R before we get into the dimensions of these. So in low, I already mentioned that 15 lumens is exactly the same. The difference being that you get 37 hours of runtime in that 15 lumen mode. So that's 17 hours more than they're able to get out of that AA. And of course the 14500 is a more powerful battery, so that makes a lot of sense. When you jump into high mode, it gets even more significant. So 350 lumens, only 50 lumens more, but it is noticeable in the dark. It's not as noticeable in the light. Side by side, it's a little bit brighter, but in the dark, it's a pretty decent difference. And it stays in 350 lumens for 10 minutes before stepping down versus 3 minutes in the 300 lumen mode for the i5T. And so you get a lot more runtime on that 350 lumens before you step down to the same 150 lumens. Now, there's no step down after that. It just kind of dies out eventually, but it goes down to 150 lumens. And they do that, flashlights do that intentionally for, one, preserving the battery life, but also keeping the flashlight from getting too hot. It's just kind of a safety thing. And so 150 lumens for 170 minutes. So in all, we're getting 3 hours of runtime in that high mode. All 3 hours are in that 150 plus lumen range, where if we look at the i5T, 150 lumens and 300 lumens, you're getting that for 28 minutes. So pretty significant jump up there. And so for this flashlight, this is the only i5T that I have, and I got it because it was the autism awareness, so we're donating all of the proceeds for that flashlight. I thought it looked cool and going to a good cause, and so that's why I picked this one up. But for the i5 series, when I'm buying them, I'm buying the i5R, and probably not going to pick up that many more of these unless there's a cool version that comes out, but pretty satisfied with what I have. Overall, I prefer the i3T over, and so if I want the swappable batteries, I go to the i3T rather than the i5T. This is a AAA, and it only goes up to 180 lumens, but that's plenty for most of my use cases. You can see size comparison, shorter, thinner, less heavy, but otherwise they're obviously very similar build. It's just based on the AA battery size versus a AAA battery size. And so all of them are going to be IPX8 waterproof. They have the same pocket clip, two-way pocket clip. It works well, especially on this size flashlight. I have the Arcfeld, which also has a two-way pocket clip, which seems like it's not super necessary for that, but I've been having a lot of problems with that one for whatever reason, getting caught, where I'm not having the same problems with these. And that's probably because usually for these, I'm carrying them in my fifth pocket or even in a pouch. And so the other one lives in a different pocket and it's getting caught on my seatbelt pretty much. Is the only place I'm having a problem with it, but getting caught on my seatbelt a lot and bending. And so really good on these ones, not having that same issue. I guess I should probably talk about that there. But the other major difference is the weight on these, and that's because I have different variations. If they were, we were looking aluminum to aluminum, it's pretty much similar. The size difference is not really noticeable, but the i5T is a hair longer, and so I don't know how much that'll pick up on camera. It's hard to line them up exactly, but this is 3.76 inches long, where the i5R is actually 3.74 inches long, so 2/100 of an inch. You don't notice it when you're carrying it, you don't notice it in pocket. The only reason I actually even noticed was preparing for this video, and so prior to that, I didn't even realize they were different. Both are going to be about 0.7 inches in diameter, and this is the same diameter all the way up and down. Obviously, it's a little bit thinner in these grooves and stuff like that, but the head of the flashlight is the same as the body of the flashlight at 0.7 inches. The pocket clip is removable pretty easily, but it will roll around in that case. You can't tail stand these because of that button. It has this kind of rubber or silicone button. It's nice and grippy. It works well, like that a lot. Don't have a lot of problems with accidentally turning it fully on in my pocket. It's pretty easy to accidentally do that partial on mode, but it's not going to drain your battery because as soon as you move off of whatever bumped it, it goes right back off. And so not having a lot of problems with that tail switch at all. And then again, talking about materials, that's where the big difference in the weight comes in. And on the i3T, we looked at the carbon fiber versus aluminum, and the carbon fiber was actually a hair heavier than the aluminum, which is because the inside body is the same on both of them, and the carbon fiber was a little bit thicker than the aluminum, just making it a hair heavier. It wasn't really noticeable in hand or in pocket, but it was different on the scale, obviously. And so I weighed all of these, and I do make sure to weigh most of the gear that I'm talking about nowadays, because I find that websites, they're usually pretty accurate on the length and diameter and stuff like that, but for whatever reason, they're almost always seem to be off on the weight, and it can be in either direction. So it's not like I think they're trying to like fudge it to make it look lighter than it is. Sometimes it's listed heavier, and maybe they're including packaging. I don't know what it is, but always seems to be off. So I weighed all of these myself, and the aluminum comes in at 2.22 ounces. So pretty lightweight already, and really good size and weight on this one. But the carbon fiber is actually noticeably lighter on this one where it wasn't on the i3T, and that comes in at 2.03 ounces. So almost 0.2 full ounces. It's not, you know, significantly lighter. You for sure don't notice in your pocket. Maybe in hand you can tell a little bit different when you're holding them side by side, but it's not like I'm choosing this one specifically because it's lighter, because it's not a huge difference. But it is, both are pretty big difference from the titanium version. The titanium version gets us all the way up to 2.61 ounces, so more than a half ounce heavier than that carbon fiber version, and it's definitely different in hand. You can actually tell the difference. And so as we're getting up in size, those materials choices do become a little bit more of a deciding factor. Still doesn't feel super heavy, and in some cases I really like the extra weightiness. It makes it feel a little bit higher quality and more solid in your hand. But either way, I think for the most part, you're just looking at preference on what you want the look to be or what metal you want. And so not a huge deciding factor, but this one is significantly heavier in titanium than it would be in aluminum. And so the other deciding factor would be the price point. Obviously these are all special variations that had different price points, but if you're looking at just a base model of both of these, the i5T comes in at $5 cheaper, around $30, versus the i5R base model being about $35. And you can often get them cheaper on sale, so I would recommend waiting for a sale. They have a sale every single month, and usually they will have sale prices and new versions of them that may be cheaper than the standard version during the sale. And so definitely worth just waiting for that. They do some other materials as well that I don't necessarily have, but if we look at like the Ace Beam Pokelit, which is almost identical in size, the copper makes a pretty big difference as well. This one weighs in at 3.33 ounces. And so that's gonna be your major factor in the materials. Obviously the look is one thing and then the weight's the other, but the output of them, as long as you're getting the same model between them, should be identical. But that's really everything I had to talk about. Actually, I lied, one more thing is just the beam distance on these, and we're gonna be talking in high mode for both of them. On that AA platform, the i5T, we're looking at 196 feet. On the i5R, the 14500 platform, we're looking at 209 feet. So a little bit more, about 13 feet more, not a significant difference, but a small difference. And I don't really have a way to measure that. I mean, I guess technically I could just flash it down and have someone run that distance and measure it, but I don't have a way to really measure that, so I'm just going off of the paper reading there. But let me know what you think of these flashlights down in the comments below, and if you have any of them, what your experience with them has been. I really like them, not as much as I like the i3T. I like the i3T because it's a really great fifth pocket carry that takes up a little bit less room, but when I do want a little bit more output, I will reach over for those i5Rs, and it's a really nice compromise, still being pretty small and lightweight, fitting in a lot of pockets, pouches. This can even fit in your fifth pocket. It sticks out a little bit more than the i3T, but still can fit in that fifth pocket. It's still small. Definitely a trade-off. I prefer the i3T just a little bit over it though. But let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoyed this video. And I hope you have a great one. Take care.